It began in the dead of winter, under the cover of darkness, on the night of January 22nd, 1991. A hulking RAF Chinook helicopter sliced through the cold Iraqi air, carrying 8 men with war in their eyes and silence on their lips. They were the British Army's elite, the Special Air Service. Their call sign was Bravo 20. Dropped deep behind enemy lines, the 8-man patrol was tasked with a mission whose nature remains debated to this day. Either to gather intelligence on the Iraqi main supply route between Baghdad and the northwest, or to locate and destroy mobile Scud missile launchers threatening coalition forces. Whatever the exact objective, one truth is indisputable: the mission would go catastrophically wrong. What followed became legend, part military lore, part cautionary tale, and part myth, told in fragments and disputes. Some of those men would never return, some would wish they hadn't, and one, only one, would make it out of Iraq alive, after walking nearly 200 miles through enemy territory with no food, almost no water, and death hounding every step. Chris Ryan, real name Colin Armstrong, was one of the 8. A former Special Forces soldier with steel nerves and a quiet demeanor, he remembers that flight into Iraq with haunting clarity. "I can remember getting onto the helicopter," he once said, "and my QM was next to me and I said, 'This is a one-way ticket.' The terrain was unfamiliar, the maps outdated. His dated back to 1944. His gear, Second World War issue. This was no precision drop. Even the landing site was a matter of debate. Ryan would later claim they were deliberately dropped close to the observation point due to the heavy burden of their packs. Others, like patrol member Mike Coburn, believed it was a navigational error, one that would seal their fate. From the start, the mission teetered on a knife's edge. The ground was too hard to dig into for a proper observation post. The radio communications were patchy or faulty, and the patrol's insertion had not gone unnoticed. Nearby sister patrols aborted their missions and withdrew. Bravo 20 pushed forward. Then came the shepherd boy. He stumbled upon the patrol with his flock, an unassuming trigger that set the entire operation ablaze. The boy left. The men knew he would return with others. Moments later, the thrum of a bulldozer echoed through the valley. Not a tank, but it didn't matter. They were compromised. Iraqi forces closed in. They scattered under fire, breaking into 2 groups, then more, as chaos tore through their ranks. It was a fragmentation of men, of mission, and soon, of hope. Chris Ryan, Sergeant Vince Phillips, and Lance Corporal Ian Mac McGowan formed one of the splinter groups. They were cold, armed with only 2 functioning rifles and a pistol between them, trudging into an Iraqi winter that would prove more merciless than any enemy soldier. Vince Phillips, a seasoned veteran of 19 years, began to suffer first. Hypothermia crept in, slow and lethal. He couldn't hold his rifle. He mistook the color of his gloves for his own skin. Ryan tried to keep him moving, pleaded with him through the night. It wasn't enough. Vince Phillips died somewhere in the Iraqi wilderness, alone or nearly so. Official records list the date as January 22nd. Ryan insists it was 3 days later. The timeline is fogged, like the war itself, in memory and trauma. Soon after, McGowan was captured while trying to find help. That left Ryan, utterly alone, deep in hostile territory, with no food, poisoned water, and a body breaking down more with each hour. "I started hallucinating and seeing visions of my daughter," he said later. "It was that vivid, I was putting my hand out to get hold of her." For 7 days and 8 nights, Chris Ryan walked. At night he moved, by day he hid. He drank contaminated water from a chemical plant, burning his mouth. For the final 3 days, he drank nothing at all. The march became legendary. Nearly 200 miles to the Syrian border, the longest escape and evasion in the history of the SAS. When Ryan finally staggered into the border town of Abu Kamal, he had lost 38 pounds. His toenails were gone. Pus oozed from open blisters. His liver was damaged. He was barely alive, but he was free. Back in the desert, the rest of Bravo 20 were falling into the hands of the enemy, or worse. Andy McNab, the patrol leader, was with Trooper Stephen Lane, Trooper Robert Concilio, and Corporal Roy Pring. Their version of events is steeped in controversy, not least because of the conflicting details offered in memoirs and later investigations. According to McNab, they hijacked a taxi using deception, pretending Concilio was injured, luring in a passing car, then surrounding it. The group fled in the vehicle, later encountering an Iraqi checkpoint where they claimed to have engaged and killed enemy soldiers. Other accounts suggest there was no firefight, only confusion, fear, and ultimately, a failed escape attempt. Concilio was shot and killed during a later confrontation with civilians. Lane, like Phillips before him, died of hypothermia after attempting to swim across the Euphrates River. McNab, Pring, and Coburn were eventually captured. All three, along with McGowan, were tortured during captivity, though again, accounts differ. McNab described brutal treatment, beatings, mock executions, teeth pulled. But McGowan would later say the worst of those tales never happened, or at least weren't visible. It is inconceivable that such incidents could have occurred without them being discussed, or being physically obvious, he said. Whatever the truth, all four men were eventually released from the infamous Abu Ghraib prison. They returned to Britain as survivors of a mission that became a symbol of both heroism and controversy. In the years that followed, Bravo 20 was retold again and again, in books, films, interviews, and official investigations. Andy McNab's Bravo 20 hit shelves in 1993, followed by Chris Ryan's The One That Got Away in 1995. Both were commercial hits. Both sparked intense scrutiny. Other accounts followed, Mike Coburn's Soldier 5 and Peter Ratcliffe's Eye of the Storm among them. The stories often contradicted each other, sometimes subtly, sometimes glaringly. The media accused the soldiers of exaggeration, even fabrication. Investigative journalist and former SAS trooper Michael Asher retraced the patrol's steps, questioning key claims. In his book, The Real Bravo 20, he suggested the battle details were embellished and the threat overstated. The regiment said little. The SAS rarely speaks. But the contradictions raised uncomfortable questions. Why had the team gone in with such old maps? Why were their radios faulty? Why had they ignored advice to take vehicles, an option that may have provided them a way out? And why had the escape plan changed mid-mission, directing them towards Syria instead of the planned exfiltration point in Saudi Arabia? That change meant Allied aircraft scoured the wrong routes, looking for men who were no longer there. Even the death of Vince Phillips remains shrouded in uncertainty. His date of death, his final words, the search effort, all contested. 30 years later, Chris Ryan stood in the SAS cemetery at St. Martin's Church in Hereford, among the graves of men who, like Phillips and Lane, never made it home. "I'm not bitter," he said. "It's war, the fog of war, the confusion of war. Mistakes were made. But one thing with the regiment is they try to learn from mistakes." And yet, the lesson of Bravo 20 remains elusive, somewhere between valor and failure, between myth and memory. The men of that patrol lived and died in the shadows, some by bullets, some by the cold, and some, perhaps, by decisions no one will ever fully understand. But out of that frozen desert, one man walked his way into legend, and with him, he carried the silence of those who could not. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.